She used to believe that hard work spoke louder than politics. That integrity was a language the world still understood. But the world she entered, glass walls, open offices, smiling emails, had its own dialect. One where silence was compliance and loyalty was a liability. Maya Johnson learned that too late. It started on a Monday that felt like any other. The sun poured into the 12th floor of Luminate Tech, the kind of Silicon Valley company that preached culture louder than compassion. Maya, 32, senior project lead, had just delivered the biggest product rollout of the quarter, 6 months of unpaid overtime, sleepless nights, and the quiet pride that came from doing something right. The company announcement came through Slack. Product Alpha's success is credited to our leadership team. Congratulations to VP of Strategy, Daniel Crane. Maya froze. Her name wasn't there. Not once. She scrolled again, reading every line, her eyes tracing each word like a wound that kept opening. Daniel Crane, her boss, the man who had barely attended half their meetings, now celebrated on the company homepage with a photograph of him shaking hands with the CEO. Her team messaged her privately, "We know it was you, Maya." She typed back, "Doesn't matter. We did it together." But it did matter. And deep down, they all knew it. That night, she stayed late at her desk long after everyone had gone home. The office lights hummed, the air conditioning whispered, and on the glass wall, she could see her reflection, tired eyes, coffee stains, the trace of mascara she'd stopped caring to fix. Her laptop screen glowed with the company's shared drive. Folder after folder, report after report, every piece of data she had built, every code commit, every test plan that bore her signature. She could hear Daniel's voice from last week echoing in her memory. "Maya, you're doing great work, but let me handle the presentation. Clients respond better to leadership faces." Leadership faces. That was the moment she'd been erased. She sat there for hours, scrolling through her work, until her reflection on the screen looked like a stranger's. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just whispered into the silence, "They think I'll take it quietly." Outside, the city was asleep, but inside Maya, something had woken up. A clarity. Cold and precise. Not rage, not vengeance, something quieter, sharper. By midnight, she opened a new document. Title: Exit Plan. Phase 1A. Small, almost invisible smile appeared on her face as she typed the first line. Resignation begins not with notice, but with awareness. And as the cursor blinked on that glowing screen, Maya realized she wasn't quitting. She was rewriting the script. For the next few days, Maya walked through the hallways of Luminate Tech like a ghost in daylight. She smiled when people passed, nodded in meetings, and typed notes no one would ever read. But under the calm, something was shifting. Daniel Crane didn't notice. He never did. He was busy basking in the afterglow of his promotion. A corner office, a new assistant, a LinkedIn post that read, "Proud to lead our team to another record-breaking quarter." Maya read it 3 times, her jaw tightening with every word. Then she whispered, "You didn't lead. You followed." But instead of lashing out, she started collecting, not gossip, but truth. Every file, every email chain, every timestamp that showed who had done the real work. She downloaded meeting recordings, archived version histories, and exported performance dashboards. She knew the system better than anyone. She'd built half of it herself. At home, her apartment became a quiet war room. Coffee mugs lined her desk, and her screen flickered with evidence, lines of code, project logs, client feedback with her name on it, her voice in meetings that Daniel had claimed as his own. There was no anger in her face. Only focus. She wasn't planning revenge out of hate. She was restoring balance. One evening, while scrolling through archived messages, she stumbled upon something she hadn't expected, an internal chat between Daniel and another executive, discussing a strategic adjustment to the bonus allocation. Her bonus. The message was cold, clinical. "Let's pull Maya's share under leadership incentive. She'll get recognition later." Recognition later. The words felt like acid. She closed her eyes, leaning back in her chair, letting the pain wash through her. Recognition was the currency she'd lived on. Not the money, the meaning. And they'd stolen even that. Her phone buzzed. A text from Claire, her closest friend in HR. Maya, you didn't hear from me, but they're prepping your role for restructuring. Restructuring. That was corporate language for disposal. Maya's heartbeat slowed. Not in fear, in certainty. If they were going to erase her, she would choose how the story ended. The next morning, she arrived early. The office was still empty, the sky still gray. She walked straight to the break room, poured herself coffee, and looked out over the city skyline. Her reflection stared back in the glass, calm, composed, unbothered. When Daniel walked in, she greeted him with a gentle smile. "Morning," she said. "Morning, Maya. Big week ahead. Hope you're ready for another push." "Always," she replied. He didn't notice the flicker in her eyes, the quiet knowing that this was the last week he'd ever underestimate her. That night, back at her apartment, she printed out the evidence, reports, screenshots, meeting minutes, and that single message about her bonus. She placed them carefully into a folder labeled Integrity Report and uploaded a digital copy to a public drive. Then she opened her exit plan document again. Under Phase 1 Awareness, she wrote, "Everyone smiles until the lights change." And beneath it, she added a new section, Phase 2 Exposure. Truth doesn't need a stage, just a spark. Maya leaned back, closed her eyes, and let the soft hum of the city outside blend with the quiet thrill rising in her chest. She wasn't just leaving a company. She was building her legacy, one truth at a time. As she shut her laptop, the faintest smile crossed her lips. Tomorrow, Daniel would walk into his office, unaware that the foundations beneath him had already begun to crack. The next morning, the office buzzed with its usual noise, keyboards clicking, laughter in corners, the smell of burnt coffee and ambition. Maya walked through it all like someone who had finally found a rhythm in the noise. Something inside her had shifted. She wasn't there to fight anymore. She was there to finish. Daniel called her into his office. His tone was smooth, polite, too polished. "Maya, HR mentioned you've been unusually quiet. Everything all right?" She smiled softly. "Everything's perfect." He nodded, uncertain. "Good. We'll need that presentation draft by Friday." "You'll have it," she said. What Daniel didn't realize was that her silence was no longer surrender. It was strategy, not to destroy, but to detach. That afternoon, she opened her project files one last time. Every report, every metric, every idea she had built was now neatly backed up, not to expose anyone, but to preserve her truth. It wasn't proof for others anymore. It was closure for herself. At lunch, she met Claire from HR at a small cafe near the office. Claire leaned in, lowering her voice. "Maya, they're restructuring. Daniel's lobbying to keep his new role. Your name came up, in ways I didn't like." Maya sipped her coffee. "Thanks for telling me. But I'm already ahead of it." Claire frowned. "You're leaving." "Not just leaving," Maya said gently. "I'm moving on." That night, in her apartment, she deleted the folder labeled Integrity Report. Her hands hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before she pressed the key. Gone. It felt strangely freeing, as if she'd let go of a weight she didn't realize she'd been carrying. Then she wrote her resignation letter. No bitterness. No accusations. Just truth. To the Luminate leadership team, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to Product Alpha. I'm proud of what we built. It taught me that value isn't always recognized by title, but by integrity. I'm ready for my next chapter. Maya Johnson. The next morning, she printed the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it on Daniel's desk. When he found it, he called her immediately. "Maya, this can't be serious. You're leaving? After everything." "After everything," she said quietly. "You're making a mistake. The next phase could have been yours." "Maybe," she said, smiling. "But I've already started the next phase, mine." He stared at her, trying to read the calm in her eyes, but there was nothing to grasp. She wasn't angry anymore. She was done. That afternoon, she packed her desk, a few photos, a notebook, a plant she'd kept alive longer than she expected. Colleagues stopped by, surprised but supportive. "You'll do great anywhere," one of them said. She smiled. I already am. As she walked out of the building for the last time, the California sun hit her face. The glass walls reflected her image, no longer the tired reflection of someone erased, but the quiet glow of someone rewritten. At a small park nearby, she sat on a bench, pulled out her phone, and opened an email from a startup founder she'd met months ago at a conference. They had admired her leadership, her empathy, her ideas. The subject line read, "Let's build something that values people." She took a deep breath, typed one line, and hit send. "Let's talk." As she leaned back and watched the light shift through the trees, she realized that her silent resignation had never been about leaving. It was about reclaiming the part of herself she'd almost given away. And in that stillness, where anger could have lived, something gentler bloomed: peace. 2 weeks later, the air felt different. Lighter. The rhythm of her mornings had changed. No alarms before dawn, no traffic-filled commutes, no Slack pings echoing her name. For the first time in years, silence wasn't pressure. It was peace. Maya moved through her small apartment like someone rediscovering a forgotten melody. She brewed coffee slowly, watched the steam rise, and stood by the window as the city woke up beneath her. The world hadn't changed, but she had. Her phone buzzed with an email notification from Aurora Labs, the small, values-driven startup she'd spoken with. The subject read, "Offer letter, head of product strategy." She read it twice, her heart steady but full. This wasn't validation. It was alignment. A place that wanted her not for her silence, but for her voice. When she joined Aurora a month later, she was greeted not with a handshake from a VP, but a warm smile from the founder herself, a woman named Elena Cruz. "Welcome to Aurora, Maya," Elena said. "We build with purpose here, and we lead differently." Maya nodded. "That's all I've ever wanted." The office was small, 20 people, all driven by ideas, not egos. On her first day, Maya walked into a meeting and noticed something striking. No one dominated the room. People listened, shared, disagreed respectfully. It was everything Luminate had pretended to be. That evening, as she walked out of the building, she passed by a newsstand. On a tech magazine cover, a familiar name caught her eye: Luminate Tech faces internal audit over mismanagement claims. She stopped. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. She didn't need to read the article. She didn't need to know how or why. Maybe the truth had surfaced on its own. Maybe karma had simply caught up. But as she stood there, a strange calm filled her. She felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Only clarity. Some truths don't need witnesses. That night, she met Claire for dinner. Claire smiled when she arrived. "You look happy." "I am," Maya said. "It's different when you work somewhere that listens." Claire nodded, then lowered her voice. "You saw the news?" Maya hesitated, then nodded. Claire sighed. "Daniel's under review. Some of your old team spoke up. Apparently, he's not taking it well." Maya stirred her drink. "That's his story now." Claire smiled softly. "And yours?" Maya looked out the window, the city lights blurring into gold streaks. "Mine's still being written." A few weeks later, she began mentoring a group of young professionals, people burned out, underappreciated, disillusioned. They met every Thursday evening at a local co-working space. Maya listened more than she spoke, offering small, steady wisdom instead of speeches. One night, a young woman named Tara said, "How did you not let the anger eat you alive?" Maya smiled gently. "By realizing that anger is just proof that we cared. What matters is what we build from it." Tara nodded, her eyes misting. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not," Maya said. "But it's worth it." As the room emptied and the lights dimmed, Maya stayed back, writing notes in her journal. At the top of the page, she wrote, "The silent resignation wasn't leaving a job. It was leaving the noise." She closed the notebook, placed her pen beside it, and looked up at the night sky through the window, her reflection merging with the stars. In that quiet moment, she finally understood what peace looked like. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of self. 6 months later, Aurora Labs had grown faster than anyone expected. What began as a small collective of dreamers now drew attention from investors, journalists, and former colleagues who had once overlooked her. The office walls hummed with energy, the kind born of purpose, not pressure. One Friday afternoon, as sunlight spilled across her desk, Elena stepped into Maya's office holding a tablet. "We've been invited to pitch at the Innovate Now Summit in San Francisco. It's a big one, Maya. Investors, media, everyone." Maya smiled. "That's incredible." "There's more," Elena said carefully. "Luminate Tech will be there too." For a heartbeat, the air thickened. Maya's pen stilled above the page. "You're sure?" Elena nodded. "Their VP of strategy is presenting a competing product." Maya exhaled slowly. "Daniel Crane." Elena studied her face. "You don't have to go if it complicates things." Maya shook her head. "It doesn't. It clarifies them." That night, she couldn't sleep. The city outside pulsed with neon and noise, but inside her apartment, everything was still. She sat at her desk, running her thumb over the edge of her old Luminate ID badge. She had kept it in a drawer, not as a souvenir, but as a reminder of the person she used to be, the one who thought value had to be proven. When morning came, she felt steady. She wasn't going back to confront Daniel. She was going to represent who she had become. The day of the summit arrived. The convention hall glittered with banners, cameras, and polished smiles. Aurora's booth was modest, but bright, clean lines, open screens, real people telling real stories. Across the aisle, Luminate's display gleamed with corporate excess, all chrome and slogans. Then she saw him. Daniel Crane, shaking hands with executives, laughing too loudly, wearing confidence like armor. For a second, old emotions flickered, hurt, disbelief, but they dissolved just as quickly. When their eyes met, he froze. Recognition flashed, then something else, unease. "Maya," he said finally, crossing the floor. "I didn't realize Aurora was here." She smiled politely. "We are. Good to see you, Daniel." "You're looking well," he said, tone rehearsed. "So are you," she replied. "How's Luminate?" He hesitated. "Busy. Different." He glanced at her booth. "Head of product strategy, huh? Congratulations." "Thank you." They stood in a brief, loaded silence. Then he said, almost nervously, "You know, I always regretted how things ended." Maya looked at him for a long moment. "So did I. But endings have a way of teaching us what beginnings should look like." He nodded, uncertain what to say next. "Good luck today," she added, extending her hand. He shook it, his grip firm, but his eyes restless. Later that afternoon, Aurora took the stage. Maya presented their platform, technology built not to manipulate data, but to empower communities. Her voice carried calm conviction, each word drawn from experience. The audience leaned in, not just listening, but believing. When she finished, applause filled the room. Cameras flashed, questions poured in. She caught sight of Daniel in the crowd, his expression unreadable. Backstage, Elena hugged her. "You were brilliant." That was more than a pitch, it was a statement. Maya smiled, feeling something inside settle. It's amazing what happens when you stop asking for permission to speak. That evening, as the city lights shimmered on the bay, Maya stood outside the convention center, letting the cool air wash over her. She thought of the girl who had once stayed late in a cold office, whispering into silence. Now, the silence was hers, and it sounded like freedom. But as her phone buzzed with new messages, one caught her eye. An email. Subject line, from Daniel Crane. She hesitated, then opened it. "Maya, your presentation reminded me why you were always the best part of Luminate. I'd like to talk, not about business, but about making things right." She read it twice, then closed her phone without replying. Some conversations belong to the past. Still, as she walked away, the night wind carried a question she couldn't quite silence. Was forgiveness another form of strength, or another resignation waiting to happen? The message stayed unopened for days. Every time Maya's phone lit up, her eyes flickered to it, then away again. It wasn't fear that held her back, it was the question underneath it: what would answering change? At Aurora Labs, life moved fast. New investors signed on after the summit. The team doubled in size, and the company buzzed with optimism. Yet, even in the middle of success, Maya felt that faint pulse of unfinished business, a thread tugging at the edge of her peace. One night, after another 12-hour day, she found herself walking by the waterfront. The city lights stretched across the bay like a constellation of choices. She sat on a bench, phone in hand, thumb hovering over Daniel's email. Finally, she opened it again. His words were simple, almost careful. "I want to apologize. You deserved better. I didn't see what I had until it was gone. I'd like to meet, if only to say the words in person." She stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then she whispered, "Maybe it's time." 2 days later, she agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe downtown. When he arrived, he looked older, less certain, the confidence of their past replaced by something humbler. "Maya," he said, pulling out a chair. "Thank you for coming." She nodded. "I wasn't sure I would." "I wouldn't have blamed you," he said softly. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of milk frothing and cups clinking filled the space between them. Daniel finally said, "You were the reason that project succeeded." "I knew it then, but I told myself it didn't matter who got credit as long as the company won." That lie got easier every time I repeated it. Maya listened quietly. "And now?" "Now I'm living with what that lie cost," he said. "Luminate's different. People left. I stayed too long." She studied him, the man who had once made her doubt her worth. He didn't look powerful anymore. He looked tired. Human. "I appreciate you saying that," she said. "But I'm not looking for closure from you. I found it when I walked away." He nodded, eyes low. "I figured as much. I just needed you to know I'm sorry." Silence again, gentler this time. She took a slow breath. "You know, I used to think forgiveness meant letting someone off the hook. Now I see it's about letting go of the weight." He smiled faintly. "Then I hope you find that peace." "I already did," she said. When they parted, she didn't feel triumph or relief, just stillness. The past no longer demanded her energy. That evening, she told Elena about the meeting. Elena smiled. "You did the right thing. Sometimes the final act of strength is choosing not to fight." Maya nodded. "It's strange how light it feels." Later that night, she opened her journal and wrote, "Forgiveness isn't a gift for them. It's the door I walk through to meet myself again." As the ink dried, her phone buzzed with a new message, this time from Tara, her mentee. "Got promoted today. You were right. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving me right. Thank you." Maya smiled, a quiet warmth spreading through her. The chain of hurt had broken. In its place, something better was growing, a cycle of courage, of people who would no longer be silent. Outside her window, the city shimmered with its usual noise, but tonight it sounded like music. Spring came early that year. The air in San Francisco carried the smell of rain and something new, possibility. Aurora Labs had just moved into a sun-filled space overlooking the harbor. Desks were scattered with half-finished prototypes and coffee cups. Laughter drifted between whiteboards covered in plans. Maya stood by the window, watching the water. A year ago, she'd walked away from everything she thought defined her. Today, she was leading a team that believed in building things that mattered. Elena stepped beside her. "We got the contract," she said, grinning. "The city's partnering with us on the accessibility project." Maya laughed, genuine and light. "That's incredible." "You earned it," Elena said. "You built this culture. The trust, the calm, it starts with you." Maya smiled. "Then let's protect it." When Elena left, Maya stayed at the window, thinking about the word protect. It wasn't about guarding against failure anymore. It was about nurturing what had finally grown right. Later that afternoon, she held her weekly mentorship session. The room was full now, faces she didn't know 6 months ago. Tara sat near the front, animated, confident. "Let's talk about leaving," Maya began. "Not running away, but moving toward something. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do for your career, your heart, your sanity, is to walk out with your head high." A hand rose in the back. "How do you know when it's time?" Maya paused, remembering that cold night in the Luminate office, her reflection staring back at her. "When silence starts to sound like surrender," she said softly, "that's when you start writing your next chapter." The room was quiet. Some took notes, others just breathed a little deeper. After the session, Tara handed her a small envelope. Inside was a photo of the group with a handwritten line beneath it. "Because you spoke, we learned how to listen." Maya traced the words with her thumb. Her chest tightened in the best way, the kind that reminded her she was alive, not surviving. That evening, as dusk settled over the city, she walked along the pier. Couples laughed. A street musician played something sweet and nostalgic. Gulls circled in the fading light. She took out her phone, scrolling to Daniel's old message one last time, then deleted it. The act felt neither dramatic nor final, just complete. She stopped at the edge of the water, watching the waves break against the pylons. The sky bled gold and lavender. For the first time in years, she wasn't measuring success by titles, applause, or recognition. It was measured in calm breaths, in mornings without dread, in people who felt seen because she had learned to see herself. She whispered to the wind, almost smiling, the silent resignation was never about leaving them. It was about coming back to me. A child's laughter carried down the pier. The street musician changed songs. The tide rolled in and out like punctuation. Maya turned away from the water, walking toward the city lights, toward a life she had chosen, built, and finally believed she deserved. And as the camera of her story pulled back over the pier, over the skyline, over the thousands of offices glowing in the night, the world felt quiet for just a breath. Not the silence of resignation, the silence of peace.